Hi, and thank you for joining me again. This is Jeannie Foote from Katara Med Spa on another episode of Wellness Wednesday. And I'm in my spa today, which feels wonderful to be back here during this whole COVID thing. We're finally coming to an end. And I am just so thrilled to introduce you to my guest today. And I think it's a perfect fit for having gone through this whole quarantine time, coming out and feeling just reinvigorated and engaged in our health and our wellness. And I just think our guest today is perfect for this. Her name is Bobbi Kahler, and we have met a couple of years ago, I think, right? 2015, something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
So Bobbi, it's just so wonderful to have you here today. Let's kick things off. Tell people who you are and give them some insight into your health journey.
Okay. Well, we first met when, because as you know, I do sales training and coaching, which coaching is very near and dear to my heart. But my health journey, I was thinking about that. And I think that, Jeannie, there's the moment when I knew I had a problem versus when the problem actually started.
Okay.
And the distinction is this. I knew I had a problem on March 6th of 2003, because that was the day I got out of bed and I no longer had the strength to lift my arm so I could brush my teeth. Now, obviously it didn't just happen on March 6th. What had happened is for the prior 10 months, I was getting more and more fatigued. I was getting sicker. And like I think a lot of people, I just kept pushing through it. And I remember even at some points, I was so tired, I couldn't stand up to the shower. Like I had to sit down in the middle of my shower. And then I got to the point where I was too tired to stand up long enough to put my makeup on. So I took a kitchen stool into my bathroom and I sat on the kitchen stool while I put my makeup on. And then to the point where sometimes I was too tired to brush my teeth. So I thought, well, I could sit on the kitchen stool. I can put all my weight on my elbows and all I have to do is lift my forearm to brush my teeth. And so on March 6th, I finally got to the point where I didn't have the energy I didn't have the strength to lift my forearm anymore.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, it's the classic frog in cold water that's heated up. You don't even notice what's going on to you.
Yeah, that's just incredible. So tell us how did you discover what was wrong?
That was a multi-year process. Because at first, I mean, I went to a few different doctors and a lot of them said, yeah, we know you're tired, but we really don't know what to do to help you. And I found a doctor at OHSU. I was living in Portland, Oregon at the time, and he was amazing. And he said, there's some things that we're researching. And he said, based on what I'm seeing, he said, probably only 3% of people who have what you have will experience a full recovery. And then he told me the really bad news. He said, but we don't really think there's much that Western medicine can do to help you. And so I'm like, okay, so how do you keep going? And I had a friend recently say, how did you hear that 97% of the people wouldn't recover and it didn't discourage you? And I looked at him, his name's Paul, and I said, that's interesting. I never heard 97% wouldn't recover. I heard 3% would. So what that meant to me, isn't that, I mean, it's a different way to look at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because if you hear that, then you think, okay, well, how do I keep going? What do I have to learn? What did that 3% do that I could also do? And so it was that was about 6 months into the illness. And it was about 18 months after I first collapsed. I found an integrative doctor, and her name was Barbara, and that woman was a lifesaver. She was amazing. And after we did the first battery of tests, and what it came out to be, it was my adrenals. There's adrenal fatigue, there's adrenal exhaustion, and then collapse. And mine was in a collapse mode. And she said, I've treated other people that have had this. It typically takes at least 2 years once we get everything sorted out. And that's how, she recommended that I do a weekly massage, which up until that point, it was, massage was something you do for, a special occasion. It never occurred to me.
Right.
And so I became a huge fan. I had a wonderful massage therapist. Her name was Kim. And every Friday, that's what I did. I got my massage. And Barbara also changed the way that I was eating, because I wasn't eating nearly enough protein. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then she also suggested acupuncture. I thought, but I hate needles.
Yeah.
But I tried it,
Not
and
a
it
good
was
combo.
amazing. Yeah, it was amazing. And she was just great. And it was just one step at a time. And they were slow steps, and it took a long time.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, have you ever had an experience with non-Western medicine before?
No. I
Okay.
mean, and I was from the Midwest, and non-Western medicine, it always felt like it was out there.
Right,
And,
right.
but I became a huge believer, and I also did hydrotherapy, and
Okay.
I really think that's what led me back to health.
Okay. Now, what is hydrotherapy?
This was at a point where I can't remember why she suggested it, but it's weird, but you're in the treatment room, and you're basically wrapped in incredibly hot, moist towels. And then you do that, and then they replace them with cold towels, and it's something to get your adrenals stimulated or something.
Okay.
And it was awesome. I mean, it was very relaxing, and both with the acupuncture and with that, and even the massage, I'd go in and I was so tired. My husband had to drive me because I couldn't even drive myself. That's how weak I was. But I'd leave there with like such clarity and just feeling so much better. Now, of course, at that point, I was in such a deficit that it only lasted, a few hours, a few days sometimes. But it was, and I did that for, like I say, multiple years.
It's
until I was
incredible.
recovered.
Was there anything that you could have done to prevent this, or is this just a weird flip of a switch thing that just happened in your body?
No, this was, I hate to say it, but it was a culmination of choices that I made.
Okay.
Because bad choices, things that we all probably do. My husband and I, we moved to Portland, Oregon. It was a couple of weeks before September 11th happened. It was 2001.
Okay.
And we'd made the decision to start a business. So the things that I knew to do, like eating well, getting enough sleep, exercising, I no longer had time for those.
Okay.
Yeah. And so what I found is that,
go ahead.
Yeah, you have to make time for those things, because if you don't, that's what can happen.
Yeah. It's so important, isn't it? It's just, it's incredible. As I have gone on this journey myself, every person I talk to, every person who's been through a hurdle like this, it all comes back to taking care of yourself. And
Absolutely.
it's really, really important. And I think we take it for granted, especially as women. I think
right.
Women can resonate with that, that we don't always put ourselves, we don't always give the oxygen mask to ourselves first. We take care of everybody else first. And it's just, I think it's kind of how we're wired, truthfully.
Yeah.
So,
and it can feel selfish.
Absolutely. And self-care is not selfish. It's so not. I mean, I think it's really a balanced part of life. But so when you look back on this experience in hindsight, what has hindsight taught you?
Kind of what you just said, self-care is not selfish. And since that time, a couple of things. It was 2007, I think, when I finally had a clean bill of health. So that was, a long time. It was a long time. And part of the problem, Jeannie, is that I didn't fully stop to take care of myself, even after these wake-up calls. I kept trying to, because I had a lot of speaking engagements, and I didn't want to let anybody down. And so I kind of prolonged, because of those decisions, I prolonged how long I was in that state. So, that self-care is important. That was one of the things. Something that was kind of painful for me is that I lost some friends during this process. Because finally Dr. Barbara got through to me, and she's like, you're going to have to start saying no to some things. and people were supportive until I had to say no to some of their things. Like a woman who was a very good friend of mine, she was going to be in my wedding. She sent me an email to terminate our friendship because I was too tired. I was too sick to go to a Fourth of July event that she was having. And you know, what do? You just have to know that taking care of yourself is important, and you have to set boundaries that this is what I'm going to do. And it's not selfish, because what I really learned was there was no way for me to help anybody else if I was lying in bed.
I call it let them slip through the strainer. I say it a lot in life, you know, people come in, so this is the way I look at it. People come into your life like a bouquet of flowers. And some people are the baby's breath and the ferns and kind of the filler flowers. And then other people are the large peonies and the big, you know, flowers that stick around for a long time. And they take up the bulk of the bouquet. And then there's some other ones that are like the roses and just, you know, kind of incidentals in there. And sometimes the baby's breath is going to die. You know, the ferns are going to die. And you just have to let them go, because you can't hang on to them because it doesn't serve you. And they came into your life for a reason. You know, I think everybody enters into our life for a reason, but some people, you know, not everybody can stay part of the bouquet.
That's right.
You know,
that's
it's just part of life, I think. They've served their purpose and then they've moved out.
And to be okay with that, and to know that that's okay. And it doesn't mean you're selfish. It doesn't mean anything bad about you.
Right. And it's really not necessarily, it might not be anything bad about them either, because maybe their needs have changed. You know, it's just that the relationship just no longer works for either of you, and you just got to go. Yeah. I think we've all been there.
All been there.
All been there. So have there been any major changes that you've made now that we're healthy and you've had this benefit of hindsight? What changes have you made?
We made, well, a few things. Number one, I think my husband and I really took responsibility for learning what do we need to know. So we made changes to the way that we would eat. We made changes, so obviously, to our diet. And even as recently, you know, I turned 54 years ago, and I was starting to have a lot of back pain. I'd been through physical therapy, and I mean, it was so painful. I could barely put my socks on in the morning. And Rick did some research, that's my husband, and he said, you know, from what I'm reading, you know, would you consider maybe we should cut back on some of our carbs? And at first I'm like, there's no way I'm cutting out bread. Just forget it. You know, he's like,
I'd be like giving up running for you.
Yeah, like forget it. There's no way. And he's like, would you be willing to try it for 2 weeks and see what happens? I'm like, sure, I'll try it for 2 weeks. And you know, frankly, I thought I'm going to try it for 2 weeks just so I can prove you wrong, because I want my bread. And it was amazing. In 1 week, I went from not being able to put my socks on in the morning to no back pain.
And that was the only change you made?
That was the only change we made.
Okay.
No back pain. So that was one, really taking ownership of that, really investing in the self-care. You know, well, not with COVID right now, but up until that point, I still get a massage probably twice a month or so. Even if I'm traveling, I will use like Zeal or something. I will go online and find someone local so that I can get those massages. So it's really taking care of yourself. And the other real lesson I learned, and this is painful, is that there is a really big difference between not being sick and being well and being healthy. Because in 2007, when I got that clean bill of health, I had lost all my strength. I mean, I'd always been an athlete. I'd always been a runner. And it was just, I wasn't anymore. And when we moved out here to Colorado, I remember my very first bike ride. Talk about a humbling experience. You know, I made it less than a mile. And I told my husband, I'm like, I have to go back home because I think I'm going to collapse. And I was just out. I slept for, I don't know how many hours. And that's where I started. So every day it was like, okay, what can I add in? How can I keep taking those slow steps? And yesterday I went for this isn't the longest ride I've ever done, but we live at 9,000 feet, and we went for a bike ride And it was a 30-mile ride. We gained like, I think, close to 2,000 feet in elevation. And my heart rate was, because I tend to push too hard. So I've been trying on my bike rides to keep my heart rate at a lower zone, because that's supposed to be good for training. Never went above 133. And I looked back, I'm like, that's kind of an easy ride. And that's a good ride. Yeah.
I think it's important to let people know that you are an athlete.
I am.
You exercise regularly. You look for times in your day when you can go out and be outside.
Absolutely.
And for you to not be able to bend over to put your socks on had to be so extremely frustrating. I can only imagine. And then to give up the carbs and to be able to do that again, I have to think you said you felt a sense of freedom with all of that.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Because I mean, you know it. I love cycling. I love paddle boarding. I love cross country skiing. I went out 96 times for cross country skiing this year. And the thing about being an athlete, that was one of the things I really held on to, Jeannie.
Yeah.
Because the one doctor who told me that only 3% of the people who had it would recover, when he told me that, my first question was, but when can I go for a run again? And, you know, not getting in. And he looked at me and he said it with compassion and kindness. And he said, you might have to accept that your days of being an athlete are over. And it was just this instinctive, no, I am an athlete. And I will find my way back to being an athlete. It will happen. I didn't know how, didn't know how long it was going to take, but I knew it would happen.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about what you said. I love what you said about the difference between feeling good and being healthy.
Yeah.
I didn't say it exactly like that, but let's talk a little bit about that. Help us understand what you mean by that.
Yeah. So we'd moved back to Chicago and I had a different doctor, and, you know, he was also an integrative doctor, and we got to the point where my test results came back within normal limits, within the normal range. And he said, okay, so the good news is you're no longer sick. But that's when I realized I wasn't really well. I wasn't strong. I'd lost all my strength. You know, my endurance was kind of gone. I mean, you can't spend that much time. Like my days, there were days when I didn't get out of bed. Rick had to bring me my food because, you know, to sit up took such effort.
Well, your muscles must have atrophied at that point.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yep, quite a bit. So it was just a slow path back, and it wasn't like, okay, so I'm back within normal limits, so that means I'm healthy and I'm an athlete and I can go out and do the things I want to do. It was, you know, at a point, one of my doctors said, okay, you're well enough now, you can start walking. You can start going for walks. Wow. And my first walk was to the end of our driveway, which was like 20 feet. And then I graduated to walking to the end of the block, which was 4 houses away. And I remember I had to sit down on the curb to rest before I came back home. But at a point, you know, this was something else that was really important. At a point, I remember I was up to 6 blocks, woo, and I used to run 8 miles every other day, so it didn't seem like a big victory to me. Yeah. And I remember steps, because at that point at the 6 blocks, and I was feeling so bad about not being able to run, and it occurred to me, it doesn't really matter what I used to be able to do. What matters is what am I prepared to do today, and it changed the way I viewed it. So then every day when I'd go out, as long as I could, you know, still walk the same distance, that was a victory. If I could add 10 steps in, that was the equivalent of a home run, and that's. It took a long time of doing that, but I just believed, I don't know what I can get back to, right? I didn't have a vision of riding a mountain pass like I do now. I just thought, if I continue to take the actions that give me the best chance of really experiencing a recovery, that's what I'm going to do.
Oh, that's awesome. So what advice would you give to somebody who's trying to manage through a health crisis?
Few things. Trust yourself. You know your body. Listen to it. You know, Another thing is find healthcare professionals that can support you in it, and don't accept their no, if you will. Like keep searching for someone that you believe can help you. Like I had asthma. I was diagnosed with asthma when I was 25, and the first two pulmonologists I saw, they just gave me a whole bunch of medications to take. And I read all the side effects, and I'm like, this makes me nervous. I mean, I know that I can't breathe, so I have to take these inhalers right now. But I thought there's something else I could do. So I found a book on, I don't know, living with asthma or something. And that led me to find yet another pulmonologist. And he told me, I said, isn't there some way I can work on my lung capacity? Like, it's a muscle. Why can't I work on that? And he said, you can. And he said, it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be easy. And he said, we're going to have to really manage this together. Like, it was a real plan, like have the rescue inhaler with you, take your other one beforehand. And I did my first quarter mile. I was never a runner before that. And I did my first quarter mile, and I thought, this sucks. it was hard. And, but then I started to see improvement. So find a healthcare professional who believes that more is possible. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then, yeah, I think really setting the boundaries and knowing who to trust with it, because not everybody. It was surprising to my husband and I, the people we thought would support us. Some of those people did, but there were a few surprises. Like, wow, we maybe we thought there would have been more support from a few of the corners, and they just didn't happen, and that's okay. It was just that was the best they could do, and you just keep going.
I think that's really important. I think that you have to be your own advocate, especially when it comes to your own personal health care.
Yeah.
I just think I think for you, one of the things that I loved was that you found a doctor that got you. They understood you and what you wanted to accomplish. And I think that's hard to find, right? So what do people do? Do they just continue to look until they find the right one? I mean, how did you find the right doctor? How did you find the right health care? How did you find the right medicine?
Yeah. That's a really great point, because I started asking people, and some, for referrals, and some of them worked out, some of them didn't work out, but I just kept trying. And part of it was, and I'm just making a note because I want to come back to something on that. The one doctor I found in Chicago is because my husband, he was invested in this, and he had found a book that this doctor had written. And well, this is kind of related to what I wanted to get back to. Plateaus. And you get to the point where you're like, hey, it's not as bad as it used to be. Maybe this is good enough. And Rick was instrumental in, hey, this is fabulous. And is it as good as you want it to be? So he found a book by this doctor, and he said, hey, I read this book. And he said, I really think it's worth making an appointment. He said, of course, the choice is yours, but I think it might be worth making an appointment with him, see if there's anything more you can do. And so it was just not accepting that plateau and continuing to seek resources.
Oh, I love that. That resonates a lot with me, not accepting that plateau.
Yeah, because there were a lot of plateaus,
Sure.
And here's the thing, because the plateau is so much higher than what it was before, it was like, well, this is pretty good. But I wouldn't be, I just wouldn't be riding my bike for 30 miles at this kind of elevation had I been satisfied with the plateau.
So where do you want to go today?
Pardon?
Where do you want to go today? Now that you've gotten through this, how are you going to take this experience forward?
I think it's part of everything I do, because I love being outside, and there are times like when I'm skiing or biking, especially cross country skiing, that has my heart. I have so much gratitude for being out there.
Yeah.
The fact that I can be. And I remember this was early on when we first moved out for bike ride, and I was having after that first bike ride, which I barely survived, but I started having so much fun on the bike again. And I remember I was riding back home, and it was just like, please God, don't take this away from me, because I love it so much. And
Yeah.
so that's what I carry with me. Like when I'm paddle boarding, whatever I'm doing, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I've been blessed with all these additional days and these additional years. And so I want to live with meaning and with gratitude in all that I do.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. And that's probably a great place for us to end. I think that's just beautiful. I mean, to come full circle and have that kind of a mindset is really, it's beautiful, just like you are. So
Thank
tell
you.
everybody how, if they want to connect with you, what's the best way for people to connect with you going forward?
Through my website, which is bobbikahler.com, and it's just BOBBIKAHLER.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. That's a great place to find me. And I am, as you know, because we've talked about this, because of all this, I'm in the process of launching a podcast called Unyielded, a shot in the arm. And it is all about providing hope, knowledge, and assurance that we can be more fulfilled and successful if we choose. Because I think that that's part of the meaning for me, right?
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that.
I'm excited for you too, because, my sister and I were talking today about, does everything really happen for a reason? And, some people believe it does, some people believe it doesn't, but, I'm in the mindset that I think it does. And as much as I know this experience was difficult on so many different levels for you, to see you take that experience and turn it into something so beautiful and so positive, it speaks volumes about you, but it also speaks volumes about, overcoming, right? Mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really what coming out of this COVID thing, I don't want to get on my own soapbox, but I think that's where everybody needs to be, is I think we need a mindset adjustment. We've been through this difficult thing. How are we going to take it now forward? What are we going to do that's positive? And you're doing it. And I think it's really awesome. And I am so excited to hear your podcast. I can hardly wait.
I can hardly wait either. It's exciting.
It is. It's very exciting. Well, thank you so much for being here. Anything else any other words of wisdom or pearls of wisdom that you'd like to impart?
It's kind of related to what you just said, COVID and the obstacles. I don't think the obstacles have to define us. They might reveal our character, but they don't have to define who we are.
I love that. That's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you so much, Bobbi, for being here. Thank you for, I know you're going to do great things, and I'm thankful for our friendship. And please check out Bobbi's podcast. Check her out on LinkedIn. And if you want to learn more about Katara Med Spa and things that we do and what we're all about, you can find us on our website at kataraspa.com. Have a great day. Stay well. Stay safe.